All right, let's talk about Pi Network. Few projects in the crypto world get people as fired up as this one. It's one of those names you see everywhere, and it creates this massive divide. You've got the true believers on one side and the hardcore skeptics on the other. So today, we're going to peel back the layers on crypto's biggest debate.
And that really gets us to the big question, right? The one everyone wants to know. Is Pi Network a legit revolution that's going to bring crypto to everyday people, or is it something else entirely? That's the heart of it. And in this explainer, we are going to look at the arguments for both sides.
To even begin to get your head around this, you have to start with this number, over 60 million. That's how many users Pi Network says it has. And that massive community isn't just a side note. It's absolutely central to the whole story, the appeal, and yeah, the controversy. I think Coin Bureau just nailed it with this quote. It perfectly captures the two completely different ways people see this. Is it a bold experiment, or is it a pyramid scheme? To figure that out, we have to start with the dream. What was the big idea that got all those millions of people so excited? The vision that was sold to those 60 million people was actually pretty simple but powerful. A cryptocurrency for everyone. No need for expensive mining rigs, no complicated software, no insane electricity bills. All you needed was your phone. The whole pitch was about inclusivity, tearing down the walls that keep most people out of crypto.
And the way they did it was through something called social mining. Now, this is a totally different take on how crypto is usually made. Instead of computers burning energy to solve math problems, you just tap a button on your phone once a day. That's it. And to keep the network secure, you build what they call a security circle with people you trust. So the whole thing is built on people, not processing power.
And to show they were serious, the team laid out this really clear, phased roadmap. They showed exactly how they were going to go from just an idea to a test network and eventually to the big one, the open mainnet. This wasn't pitched as some get-rich-quick thing. It was meant to look like a careful, long-term plan.
And they really leaned into that community-first idea with how they planned to distribute the coins. A whopping 80% of all Pi tokens were set aside for the community, only 20% for the core team. That's a really powerful message, right? It screams, this is for you, the users.
But see, the end goal was never just about the coin itself. It was about building an entire digital economy around it. The dream was for developers to create apps right on the Pi blockchain, creating a real marketplace where you could spend the Pi you've earned on actual stuff. The idea was that real usage, not just hype, would create the value. It's a really compelling vision. But for every dream, there's a reality check. So that's the dream. Now we've got to flip the coin and talk about the other side. Because for every excited pioneer, there's a skeptic pointing to some pretty serious red flags. And this isn't just noise. These are real concerns from industry analysts who are questioning the very foundation of the project.
And the criticisms are pretty specific. The biggest one is about centralized control, which, is the exact opposite of what crypto is supposed to be. That referral system that drove all the growth, a lot of people say it looks and feels like a multi-level marketing scheme. Then there's the mandatory KYC, Know Your Customer, which not only raises big questions about data privacy, but also creates a system where the team decides who can and can't participate.
And hey, these aren't just whispers on some random forum. We're talking about well-known people in the industry, like Justin Bonds from Cyber Capital, who have come out and said it publicly. He straight up called it a scam, pointing to these exact issues, which gives the skeptical argument a whole lot of weight.
Now, when you dig into the tech side, another big concern pops up. Pi says it uses a version of the Stellar protocol, which is supposed to be decentralized, but reports have come out suggesting that, in reality, all the important validator nodes, the computers that actually process transactions, are still controlled by the core team. And if that's true, well, then it's not a decentralized network. It's a closed system run by a central group.
So after all the talk, all the promises, the rubber finally hit the road. After years of waiting, Pi's token finally started trading when the open mainnet launched in 2025. And the market, like it always does, delivered its own pretty harsh verdict. Before the launch, the hype was just off the charts. You could find these wild predictions everywhere online. Here's one from Reddit, where a user did some math based on Shiba Inu's price and came up with a value of almost $10 per coin. And honestly, a lot of people thought it would be even higher.
But this was the reality by October 2025. About 20 cents. That is a massive, just staggering gap between what the community hoped for
and what the open market decided it was worth.
And the token's price chart really tells the whole story. I mean, it did have this huge surge right at the beginning, hitting almost $3 from all that pent-up excitement. But it didn't last. The price just cratered, losing over 90% of its value before flatlining in that 20-cent range.
So what on earth happened? Well, this timeline breaks it down. You see the launch in February causing that big spike, but then look at July. A flood of previously locked tokens. Over 300 million of them were released onto the market. The available supply more than doubled in about a month, creating this insane selling pressure that the market just couldn't handle.
And to make matters even worse, there's this problem of token concentration. Get this, analysis shows that a shocking 96% of all circulating Pi is held in just the top 100 wallets. That means a very small group of early birds or insiders have the power to completely crash the price whenever they want. And nothing, I mean nothing, shows the disconnect between the hype and the reality better than this. On one side, you have the global consensus value, or GCV. It's this aspirational price of over $300,000 that some in the community believe in. And on the other side, you have the actual market price, 20 cents. It's just a universe apart.
So where does all this leave us? How do you make sense of these two totally opposite stories? Well, it really just boils down to a classic battle. Ambition versus execution.
Right now, Pi Network is kind of stuck in the middle. It has this genuinely revolutionary vision for making crypto accessible to everyone. But the reality, so far, has been a system that's been called out for being centralized, with a token that doesn't really have any proven use outside of its own little world. So it's not a clear-cut scam, but it's definitely not the revolution it promised to be. At least, not yet.
Everything, and I mean everything, now comes down to what happens next. The project absolutely has to move past the hype. It has to deliver on true decentralization and build an ecosystem with real, tangible utility. It needs to give all those millions of users a reason to actually use their Pi, to turn them into a real, functioning economy.
And that leaves us with one final big question to think about. For years, the project's main goal was to get more users. So you have to ask, is this massive global community Pi's greatest asset, the foundation for a future digital economy? Or, after all this time, is the community its only product? The answer to that question is going to decide everything.